for the region. On behalf of the SAWI team, on behalf of the American University of Beirut and the Telfer School of Management at the University of Ottawa, thank you for joining us today. My name is Charlotte Karam, and it is an honor and privilege to welcome such a dedicated group of individuals to this session as we reflect on and advance the transformative work of equal employment opportunities, or EEO, in the MENA region. EEO is a core pillar of the SAWI project. But before I begin, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge our colleagues in Beirut organizing today, the devastating impact of the ongoing violence in our region. Our thoughts and our prayers are with those killed, the victims, the displaced, and their loved ones, as well as our wider community enduring this unimaginable suffering. The urgency and importance of advancing social justice and humanity is ever more important, and the work we are gathered here to advance today is done in the spirit of social justice, equity for all humanity, and hope. Today, we are not only reflecting on the stark realities of gender gaps, but also celebrating the story of SAWI and the incredible community driving SAWI through our country partners and through its different initiatives, like this initiative, the EEO. Co-led by Dr. Lina Dao Oiri, Dr. Carmen Jaha, and also the incredible work of Ms. Excel Mayushi, the SAWI project. SAWI, as most of us here who speak Arabic know, means to equate. SAWI is an interdisciplinary, multi-country, multi-sector, multilingual, and multi-generational collaborative project. Its work is predicated on partnership, co-creation, co-leadership, and it aims to accelerate progress toward more inclusive workplaces and workforces in the MENA. Even under multiple layers of crisis, we forge pathways toward more dignified and more inclusive workplaces, no matter the tragedies and no matter the difficulties and challenges. We work together to move forward and to advance relevant structural changes within local HR systems. So the story of SAWI is the story of all of us, is a story that some of you will find familiar as we all work tirelessly on equality and equity. While our stories share common threads, they are also filled with heterogeneity and nuance, yet grounded in a deep commitment to our communities and the shared goal of creating positive change. Our stories are one, and the story is also one of intergenerational commitment, community building, and change. It is a narrative of collective action and unwavering vision to support and accelerate human progress, women's dignified and economic inclusion in the region. The protagonists of the stories are many, and yet the vision and the mission are singular, driving systemic change to create more inclusive workplaces and more inclusive societies. So as we gather here today, we aim to reflect, learn, and consider the EEO as a tool to build further. So without further ado, welcome again, and it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Carmen Jaha and Dr. Lina Dao, inspiring co-leaders of the SAWI project. It's my honor to hand over to Dr. Jaha, a renowned academic practitioner and thought leader in public policy, workplace inclusion, and leadership development, and has been her ongoing story through the SAWI project. Thank you, Carmen. Oh, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Dr. Karam, and thank you for your leadership of all of this effort and for continue to inspire all of us. I'm really excited to be here today. Good morning and good afternoon, so that we can really shed light on the nuances happening in these countries. You've heard a lot about SAWI working with employers on a menu of organization policies, and today's conversation is about how employers and advocates and experts and lawyers and academics can also engage with what is happening at the legislative and regulatory level in each of our countries. The EEO work package that we'll discuss today is about mobilizing at the legislative level and beginning to work together across multiple levels of governance towards inclusive organizations and women's access to dignified work. It gives me great pleasure to welcome my colleague and my friend, Dr. Dao, who is an associate professor of organizational psychology at the BI Norwegian Business School in Oslo, where she specializes in interdisciplinary and transnational research that bridges both academia and practice. To introduce our EO work package and set the stage for today, Dr. Dao.
Thank you, Carmen, and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for joining us. We finally got here. Thank you for everyone who went through the process of rebooking their calendars to join us now and going through the process of having to cancel earlier. And thank you for all the team for all the hard work in organizing the first time and the second time. Especially considering the situation back home in Lebanon and the suffering that everyone is enduring at the moment, particularly many of the members of our team who are actually operating and joining us today from Beirut, from Lebanon. So as Charlotte and Carmen said, today we're here to talk about equal employment opportunities. This is an extremely exciting day for us because we want to share with you some of the results, but we decided to do this sharing in a way that is very inclusive and in a way where the country experts will come and tell you about each of the countries that are involved in the project and share with you some of the insights about the legislation analysis that we did in those countries. Analysis of legislation. So the EEO project, as you may already know, is part of the broader Sawi initiative. And as part of that, we undertook the analysis of legislation across 8 countries in the Arab world. And these are, in order of their, how they show on the map, Iraq, Jordan, Lebanon, Bahrain, Iraq, Jordan, Lebanon, Libya, Tunisia, Algeria, and Morocco. The work that was involved in the package was quite comprehensive. As a first step, we started with EEO-related legislation in the MENA region. We started analyzing all aspects, all the laws that relate to equality, whether they're in the constitution, in the labor law, or any other, or represented anywhere else in the legislatively. And we identified those laws, but we also took particular attention on the enablers of legislation. So legislation that enable equality, that doesn't necessarily directly look at equality. And we also looked at any contradictions within the labor law or between the legislations. Sometimes within the same article, we found the contradictions, sometimes across. Now, contrary to, based on this, the second thing that we did is that we looked at international representation. We did an analysis from across different continents, including New Zealand, Australia, Indonesia, Japan, Nigeria, South Africa, UK, Netherlands, Brazil, Canada, Finland. So we looked at equal opportunities in places where there's evidence that those equal opportunities, employment opportunities, are actually serving their purpose, and they are creating more equitable workplaces as a whole. And we wanted to see what is happening in those different contexts as well, and if there's anything that we could learn from those experiences, or anything that we could learn from our experiences and feed back into these as well. And as a final step, we also interviewed experts from all the different countries that are represented here in order to validate the results and get input from them about why is this situation as it is? Why do we have so many laws, but in practice we have so many issues? Now, I want to highlight one key finding, and contrary to popular belief that equality laws don't exist in the MENA region, and trust me, many people think that, we do have across the 8 countries many laws that refer to equality, that attempt to create equality, in terms of codified legislation. However, do these work fully and very well? Not necessarily. Do they need reform? Absolutely. Is it only the laws that we need to work on to achieve equality? No, there's much more that we need to do. But there is a framework that exists, and we need to use our knowledge and expertise about our region in order to create together a roadmap for equal employment opportunities. Now, this road is a road that a little bit more complex. It's not only about legislation. If we have the laws in place, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to get equal employment opportunities for everyone within each of those countries. It's more than just passing laws. What we need is multi-stakeholder collaboration to break down barriers and create real opportunities for women and marginalized groups. And we all play a role, whether you think about, journalists, students, activists, civil society, government entities, gender machineries. Everyone has a role, including society as a whole, in creating this space that provides equal opportunities for everyone that is part of it. Now, on a bright note, and I would like to end with that, having worked on this project for several years now, and particularly looking back at the past 2-3 years, it's been really tough for the region as a whole. Every event we organized, we had to somehow postpone and change because there was either a man-made disaster or a natural disaster, a war happening somewhere. We've endured a lot, but on the bright side, we have seen so much commitment and dedication starting from the SAWI team to the country partners to every single person that we've reached out to and engaged in. It has been so inspiring and kept us moving all along. And today, I don't want to spend any more time from our side talking about this. I want to hand over to the country experts to start sharing with us some of the results and reflecting on equal employment opportunities within each of the countries. And without further ado, I will pass over to our country expert from Algeria, Amal Bilaid, who is the founder of Apotex and Business Services in Algeria, and who also has been working with us very closely as one of our country partners. Amal, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Lina. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for hosting me in this event. Well, it's very dear to my heart, I mean, to be part of this continuous experience with the SAWI project, especially that we are trying to accelerate and move forward the participation of women to the economy, which is one of my main subjects of focus since now almost a decade. I will give a brief presentation on Algeria's economy, just to put everyone in the context. Algeria, as everyone knows, it has become, since the split of Sudan, the largest country in Africa, with a population of a size of 46 million, with a quite robust economy, having the oil and gas sector as one of the backbone of its economy. A quite important and sizable GDP that has reached some 224 billion US dollars, and with a quiet controlled inflation rates since the sanitary crisis. Well, it has reached, in 2023, 7.8%, starting from much higher rates during the sanitary crisis, while as you know, the other countries of the region are still suffering from a double-digit inflation rate. The economy is still moving forward, and the economic growth is moving on a fashionable, on a positive fashion, with an economic growth of 4.1%. Relying on, of course, the advancement of the oil and gas, the energy dynamics, plus all that is happening in the change of the economic structure and the advancement of the private sector, who is contributing to the labor force with a rate of over 60%. Next slide, please. Okay, so as we can see it here, the gender gap, the gender gap index ranking are quite surprising, despite of the sizable efforts that the government has made in terms of advancing women participation to the labor and to the economy. There was a huge paradox between the rate of women succeeding in the education, in their participation in several sectors, although it's very difficult to reflect this in the labor market. And the interesting fact, maybe to be noted here, is, for instance, in the gender gaps, is to look into the quality of the participation of women. There is an important fact that is, there was a decline in the gender gap index due to the lack of participation to women to the economy. And this was due to the last electoral law, where we have lost, or we have not reproduced the success story of the previous law that has the quotas. So we moved from a 30% participation of women to the part of the in political roles, to something that is to less than 10% now. And the other important fact also to highlight in this gender gap and women economic participation in particular is due also to the very poor participation of women to leadership role. That is that reaches rates that are less than 10% also in Algeria. As you can see it, I mean, like the whole region, the female unemployment rate is quite high. The female participation to the labor force is very low. It's less than 20%. Although the Human Development Index is one of the highest in the region. Next slide, please. Well, going back to the legal framework in respect to equal opportunity employment, what is worth to mention is that the Algerian constitution revision back in 2020 has made major advancements. And one of the most notable ones is using, for maybe the first time in the region, a gender-neutral language. So we address to women directly. So al-muwatin, al-muwatinna. So le citoyen, la citoyenne in French. And so that's citizen, this is the same in English. There are many articles that are, and since the independence of Algeria back in 1962, a stress of including women in the political effort, in the economy, in leadership role. And this was through the official speech as well as through this legislative framework. What is worth to mention is that in the Constitution, for instance, it is clearly mentioned that women are promoted to participate to the political effort, to the high responsibilities within the government, to the elections. There is also a stress for women's participation in leadership roles, to the economy, to entrepreneurship. The right to invest is there, the right is stated everywhere. Although what could maybe be somehow hinders this effort are some laws that could have a potential interpretation, that could lead to potential discriminations. If we take, for instance, the labor law, a couple of labor laws, one of them that regulates night work for women, and that is in principle meant to regulate night work for women, and what is also defined as hard work or heavy load work for women is subject to specific conditions and authorizations. So this could be a room for different interpretations and maybe to somehow discriminatory measures. There are several enablers of equality in the legislation also, and for some of them have to do with violence against women that went now from the civil to the penal code. And this is meant to be very dissuasive, and enablers of these enablers are meant to also accelerate women's participation to the formal economy. To go back to this situation of paradox, as we can see it, I mean, despite of having the highest rate of women's engineers in the region, or maybe in the world also, having a very high rate of women succeeding in their studies, this gap in women participation have been analyzed on and always come back to the same main root causes that are the cultural and patriarchal norms. There is still a dominating culture where the perception of the role of men and women remain very rooted in the tradition. And even women themselves, somehow, they try to be active in jobs and roles where they can have the maximum of work-life balance to be able to perform what is perceived as their traditional role in the society. What is also worth to mention is that, I mean, there is a gap between urban and rural zones. Having access to public transport is an issue. The problem of infrastructure, the cost of transport, and also what is perceived as a decent facilities for women in some areas. This could be met in the industry, in some industrial zones where most of it is of the infrastructures are meant for men, and there are less facilities that are meant for the comfort and the inclusion of women. So this is basically what was reported from most of the meta-analyses that were performed in the country. And there are, of course, I mean, many unconscious biases that subsist with the background culture of being very protective to women and maybe, I mean, leaving them again, I mean, putting them in this, what is perceived as their traditional role in this society.
Thank you so much, Amal, for sharing the results for Algeria. We're going to move over to Bahrain and hear about issues contextual to Bahrain from Asil Zimmo, who is a commercial arbitrator, mediator, and lawyer and managing partner at The First Link, and who has actively worked on issues relating to legislation of equal employment and women representation in Bahrain. Over to you, Asil.
Thank you, Lena, and good morning, good afternoon to everyone. Thank you very much for having me. I'm very honored and grateful to be part of such an amazing group of people that support equal opportunities for women, and anybody that's been lucky enough to be surrounded by women in their personal and professional life know that women are a great resource and actually bring in great amount of a great amount of resources and skills, very unique skills to the context of any business organization. Now, with regards to Bahrain, Bahrain is a very small island in the Gulf. It's got a very small population. Predominantly, the population we're about 1.3 million people that live here, and we are a population that are about 50% of us as expats. So people that are not from Bahrain. Anybody that's been to Bahrain, though, will tell you that Bahrain is a very welcoming community that very much supports the expats community and very much recognizes it. It is one of the countries in the GCC, which by definition almost means that it has a very big dependency on oil as being its main form of income. Saying that, the Bahraini government and the Bahraini leadership have worked very, very hard on diversification of its economy. It led the way for a very long time in the financial services. It was a financial services hub, and it drives a great amount of its GDP from that, around, as you can see, about 80%. I think it depends on the statistics, and it depends, maybe more recent statistics you will find that the more recent statistic, you will find that there is a lot more equilibrium between the oil and non-oil division. Of course, this really makes a huge difference because of the subject of today's kind of discussion. Traditionally, oil services would not be something that women might be able to excel in. And so therefore, by increasing the diversification of the Bahraini economy, socioeconomic context, then we increase the chances of women being able to enter the workforce and succeed in the workforce. But we're very happy. I think one important fact, though, I'm somebody that's been living in Bahrain now for 12 years. And I'm really, really pleased that we see women in leadership all the time. And a number of the ministers, judges, lawyers, business entrepreneurs. There's a lot of women leadership everywhere, which is something that we're very proud of. Now, Bahrain leads on the gender gap for countries in this particular study. So it's 131 out of 146. That doesn't obviously mean that Bahrain is done all the work that there is to be done, but it does very, very well compared to its neighbors. But obviously those rankings show some gap in the workforce. Unemployment in Bahrain luckily is quite low, and but as you would see globally, female unemployment and disabled, and as well as disabled female unemployment, will be something that will have higher rate from the average. However, compared to international standard, Bahrain has remarkable results. So it's I think important that we acknowledge that. And on a day-to-day basis, I think one of the things that would be very striking in Bahrain, that there is a lot of women, like I said, in leadership and in the workforce, which is something that Bahrainis take very, very, are very proud of. Bahrain labor law had in the past some discriminatory provision where it stopped women from being able to work at night and in certain set of provision. And I'm very proud to actually say that I was part of the team that actually was involved in getting rid of those particular provisions in 2020, where the law was amended in order to give parity between men and women with regards to employment sectors as well as time. Now, I think, excuse me, and also another reform that was that we worked on during that time was the age of retirement between men and women being 55 for women and 60 for men, and we made that to be the same. I think it's quite funny because just to kind of, some of the women said, I don't know. The great thing is for this is women get to retire when they're ready to retire, but in not an age different to men, which I think is really, really important. We have great accessibility to legal services as well as e-services. We have a very digitalized economy, and you're able to access all laws, treaties, and legislations on a portal hosted by the Legislative and Legal Opinion Commission, the LLOC. There are still, as you will see, traditionally in most of Arab or Islamic countries, you will find the article which in Bahrain is Article 56 of the family law, which refers to alimony for women who that leave the work, leave the home without her husband's permission, which some also mean, which could be interpreted by the court to say if she goes to work without the husband's permission. I worked in the Bahraini justice system and in the court system for about over a decade. This is not something that is in any way, shape, or form regularly being interpreted or something that is relied upon. I think the Article 56 you will find often used when there is a claim for alimony by a wife that has decided to leave the matrimonial home, and that's actually the actual interpretation of it on the ground. Finally, and I know we are very, very short of time, like most countries in the study, social expectation is still a big, massive challenge for women. The prioritization of a family responsibility, or the fact that the buck stops with the females, still is a challenge in Bahrain, and that means that more women seek to be employed in government jobs, which gives a lot of flexibility with regards to time, etc. Also, the labor law with regards to in the public sector is different to the public sector, and that in itself supports women, especially women with family responsibilities, maternity, and etc. I think the other thing that's also worth mentioning is Bahrain have relied quite heavily relies quite heavily on expats. I think in certain positions, expats led the way in very high leadership positions. And only very recently, I think we see a shift to more and more Bahrainization. And in my opinion, that brings in itself the opportunities for women to also enter the workforce and go up the ranks. So I think the more Bahrainization we see, like actually something you'll see in all of the GCC, the more kind of localization to positions that we will see, the more I think the women will be given opportunities to succeed and to enter the workforce. Thank you very, very much.
That's a very insightful, very important point as well. One of the positive impacts also on women, from the nationalization initiatives. Thank you, Asil. Since we're running out, we're already running a little bit over time, so I'm going to go straight to Iraq, the next country. And thank you, Mariam, for joining us today. Mariam Gabbara, who is a program coordinator at Women Empowerment Organization, who also are our country partners in Iraq. Mariam, over to you.
So much, Lina, and I would like to also thank all of the SAWI team and wishing all the safety and goodness for Lebanon and all of the team back in Lebanon to stay safe. First, I'm gonna start with mentioning that Iraq as a population holds a 45.5 million as a country that heavily relies on oil and gas. So oil and gas are the most significant sector, contributing to over 90% of the government's revenues and the largest portion of its GDP. Even though Iraq as a country is blessed with other natural resources and agricultural lands, the state-owned enterprises such as oil and gas companies and state-run enterprises, they're the ones that hold the largest contributions to its GDP. Such contributors include the Iraqi national oil companies and various international oil companies such as ExxonMobil, British Petroleum, Shell, and Chevron. The state also has state-run entities providing electricity and water services, although often facing challenges in efficiency and reliability. If we can move to the next slide, please. Providing the overview of the socioeconomic data on Iraq, as you can see, we actually don't have anything past 2022 regarding the gender gap, male unemployment rates. Iraq ranked second to last on the Women's Economic Participation Index in terms of unemployment rate. Female unemployment rate is almost twice higher than male, standing at 28.5%. And when we look at unemployment rate of people with disability, these are also significantly higher than the general unemployment rate at 80%. These figures are among the highest observed in the country studies and highlight an urgent need for targeted intervention to address these disparities and promote more inclusive and economic participation. In terms of the labor law of Iraq, it was introduced and replaced. So in 2015, we had a new labor law from 1987. We don't want to be very negative because, as you mentioned, Lina, that we do have labor laws that emphasize on the importance of equal opportunities and prohibit any form of discrimination in recruitment and employment terms. However, these laws, they still have how we can say some kind of flaws like male-female restrictions, disparities in retirement benefit, lack of parental leave. For example, we have maternity leave, but not parental leave, insufficient protection against workplace harassment and discrimination. Now we can go into detail, but because of time, we have to rush. All of these points are mentioned in the slides down in the notes, and links are provided for them in order for anyone to have further insight. Speaking of the challenges to the EEO implementation, we notice that there is male-female discrimination and employment opportunities where women in Iraq face systematic barriers to entering the workforce due to cultural norms, legal restrictions, and lack of infrastructure to support their participation. For instance, women are often barred from certain jobs deemed unsuitable based on their social perceptions of their role. Additionally, workplace discrimination and harassment are still, women are still exposed to them with limited legal protection or when they recourse for victims. We also noticed that there is lack of enforcement of anti-discrimination laws. So while Iraq has legislation promoting equal employment opportunities, its enforcement remains a significant issue. The gap between written laws and actual implementation is very wide, particularly for marginalized groups such as women, even religious minorities, and other individuals from rural areas. There is weak regularity frameworks and absence of accountability mechanism, which means that the entire system lacks a proper monitoring system that actually ensures that these laws are being implemented. Thank you very much. Sorry, you're on mute.
Thank you, Mariam, for sharing all of this. And to your point about the regulatory framework, this seems to be an issue also that is common across several of the countries, and one of the areas that we're focusing on in our post-event as well. Thank you again. Now we move to Jordan. And from Jordan, we have Thana Al-Khasawni, who is the CEO of BPWA and gender diversity and women inclusion expert. She's also one of our country partners. Thank you for joining us. Over to you, Thana.
Thank you, Lena, and thank you, everybody, AUB team. My regards and my heartfelt for Lebanon. We've been always our prayers with you, and we love you all, and I hope Lebanon will be safe again, and we meet in person. Thank you, my colleagues from Algeria, Iraq, and Bahrain for sharing great insights. And I think I will start by a quick reflection on the socioeconomic numbers or context in Jordan. I will start before this, I will start with our numbers. You know, our population is around 11.5 million for 2024, with almost 1.1 actually Syrian refugees. In general, if we look at the economical numbers, we have 45% as a total employment from SMEs is done by SMEs in Jordan as private sector. And the distribution of women in business is literally focusing more into specific areas as in manufacturing and financial services, who takes like 20% and 17%. And you will see 13% in the government services, or basically producers of government services. Wholesalers and retail would be around 11%. And why we're reflecting on this, because if you look at the service sector in general, you will find we have, in the health and educational sector, you will find more women in those sectors, and they are all under the services sector. Meanwhile, in the manufacturing, the percentage of women, we've calculated it. I don't have the percentage on the back of my head, but we only had 70 companies in manufacturing owned by women or led by women, and that was a very alarming number for us. Next slide, please. Going to the numbers, as Jordan, and this is very disappointing for us, the gender gap index, we are currently at the 123 as we scored for 2024, and 129 under the economic participation gender index. And for us, this is a very too alarming numbers, because if we look at all the countries who are after us, let's say, they are all countries with conflict. And for Jordan, we have been actually studying these numbers. We've been looking, especially under the Ministry of Planning and International Relations. There has been a focus of working group who are focusing on GGI, on how to improve our indices as Jordan when it comes to gender inclusion and gender diversity. So hopefully in 2025, we will have better numbers, since we are as a group of team of different key players in the market are working on it. If we look at the unemployment rate, you will see that the unemployment rates also varies a lot between females and males. This is reported for 2022 as 18.9. I will share with you the latest numbers of the unemployment we actually have within Jordan. So it is 17.4 percentage males unemployment versus 34.7 for females. Sorry, so this is the updated one for 2024. On the other hand, if we look at youth unemployment, it has exceeded, I think, with a little bit, the 30% in 2024. And again, we actually a big importer of energy. So we are an energy depending as limited resources within our country. Our growth and GDP is 2.7 for Jordan, and the inflation rate, although it has been, or it is expected to stabilize for 2024, where it was reported in August 2024 at 1.9 from 2.1 in 2023. On the other hand, we know that it is potential that our GDP will be improving, but still the numbers are not out. From a gender lens, if we look at the policy reform and legal reform, there has been very good practices within Jordan that we are very proud of, and that took place in 2023, 2024. And we'll start with the Constitution, the first one, which is Article number 6, that is basically of inclusion of Jordanian women in that article that says basically emphasize on the equal citizenship between females and males. This amendment, by the way, it was not easy to be passed through, but I think it is explicit and finalized. On Article 23, it has reaffirmed the workers' rights.
Sana, you're muted. You got muted by mistake.
Sorry, yeah, thank you. On Article 24, it was more focused on ensuring that the sovereignty of the state drivers diverse and from the citizen, and emphasizing the collective national identity and responsibility. So they have equalized the responsibilities against each other. If we look at the amendments that has occurred on the labor law, and you will see that there is another one around the enabling community. We had different articles, and I will just look into it. It's basically the article number 2. It was around the definition of workers and employers, introducing a more inclusive language. So for us, that was also a good start to cover that employment categories. On Article 13, it was about strengthening the protections around the employment contracts, emphasizing having a written agreement to ensure that the workers' benefits are being taken care of. For Article 53 and 54, it was more about enhancing the provisions of the workers around the pay gap and or the labor disputes that is happening, and streamlining arbitration around that. If we look at the article, the other articles is more about governance mechanism, how to enhance the transparency in the public institutions, and ensure that there is basically the right accountable measures for officials to prevent any misuse of funds. Going into the potential discriminatory, no, not the next. We're still here because there are a couple of things that I would like to share also on this one, which is basically the personal status of law and the social security law. In the social security law, we do believe the recent updates had promoted youth employment, providing some incentives of exempt taxes for the youth to be more enrolled in the social security, and accordingly a lot of more females. If we look at the women in trade, and this is where I will share some insights that BPWA was able actually to identify, we have noticed in the all the laws as constitutions related to women in trade that the term merchant and trader is always associated with men. For example, the wife of the trader or the bankruptcy, in the event of bankruptcy, there has been a very outlining a lot of like clear gender biases when it comes that the owner is invariably a male. Also, there is a conversation currently under the competition law revealing a lot of, because it was revealed that there's a notable absence of specific articles and clauses that explicitly address the gender-related concerns. Another law which we think today currently is being reviewed is the public procurement law, where there's going to be some several amendments that will be taking place in the future to overcome what's the discriminatory between and giving them some more room. In general, the challenges for the EEO implementation, we have the informal sector. So there's a lot of informal sector work barriers. As I mentioned, 45% of SMEs are contributing to the economy, to the GDP. We have over 95% of our micros are informal businesses. So there has to be a lot of work. And we have been able to witness that, especially around COVID, when the social protection was not in place at that time for so many workers, and mostly they were females. The instability, definitely, of the economy, the instability of the political situation, everything around the economy that is impacting it is also happening. Low salaries, Jordan is considered, when we look at the minimum wage in Jordan, it's 280 or between 260 JDs to 280 JDs, which is a very minimum wage. And unfortunately, we have a lot of high percentage of the Jordanians are being paid there. If we look at the teachers, there was a big issue when it comes to teachers, which actually accumulates as one a very high percentage of the workers in Jordan. Their salaries are always at the bare minimum wage in Jordan. Also, the lack of legal safeguards. I would assume it's not in the sense of safeguard. It's basically the enforcement of the legal. If we look at the legislative framework in Jordan, we have been advanced, but the enforcement of those legal aspects has not been taken that serious. Hopefully, we're very optimistic today with the changes under the EMV, the Economic Modernization Vision, and how there is a lot of efforts by the government and the royal umbrella and the private sector and civil society. There's a public-private dialogue that's happening all the time, how to enforce such activity. On the other side,
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to stop here because for the sake of time, because we still have 4 countries and we're running out of time. And because I know that some of these issues are common, the sociocultural issues will be mentioned also in the other ones. Also, Fana had a very nice video that she wanted to share with us, but unfortunately, we won't have time to show it now. So what we will do is that we will share it with the participants, Fana. Is that okay if we share the link?
No problem, no problem. Definitely.
Okay, great, fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing this very, very insightful context of Jordan, and we will share the video with you later. I'm going to move on now to Lebanon, to Abir Shbaro, who is a senior gender expert and public policy advisor and VP of Lebanese League for Women in Business. Thank you for joining us, Abir. And I'm going to sorry for the last participant, I'm going to have to remind you, we just need to make sure that we stay on time to make sure that we'll listen to everyone, and that already will take us 10 minutes above the time. So thank you for understanding. Abir, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Lina. I'll try to be as short as possible. So I wanted to quote Simone de Beauvoir because this quote really resonates deeply today in Lebanon, as our 10,452 kilometers and around 5.8 million people with the highest percentage of refugees per capita in the world are facing war with myriad economic, public health, humanitarian, and political challenges, and where the need for equal opportunity is getting more critical. So she was asking about what one crisis can do. I'm asking what multiple crises can do to equal opportunities. Next slide, please. So let's begin with a quick overview of Lebanon's socioeconomic landscape. And here we can see that historically, the economy of Lebanon, the GDP, was mainly driven by the service sector, be it trade, be it tourism, banking. But with the crippling situation and the political challenges, these sectors shifted and their contribution changed dramatically. And you can see while the industrial sector was contributing around 16.34% of the GDP, it's contributing less than 3%. It's 2.76% in 2021, one of the lowest in the world. So this shift has not only impacted the economy and all the citizens, of course, but had unique implications for the labor force, especially concerning gender parity and equal opportunities. Next slide, please. So if you see here, we have to note that in Lebanon, data is not always up to date. So we have been trying to get the latest data. So here we see the labor force distribution by sex and by sectors, and we see that female are mostly working in the service industry and to a lesser extent in the industry and the agriculture. So this indicates also that they are facing significant discrepancies due to patriarchal and cultural norms and to gender division of work. So this also highlights the need for initiatives and ways to face the challenges. Axel told me I have 2 minutes, so that's why I'm rushing, okay? Okay, in this slide, we're looking at the debt evolution in Lebanon. And since 2019, Lebanon has been facing a series of crises, as you might all know, and it was exacerbated by COVID-19. And then we had the unfortunate Beirut blast in 2020. And these events have led to social and economic turmoil, to currency devaluation, to hyperinflation, high unemployment, and mass youth emigration and institutional instability. And the banking sector, once a major employer of women across various roles, has suffered severe liquidity issues, and it has prevented millions of depositors from accessing their deposits and their funds. And many women in this sector have faced forced unemployment due to these financial hardships. And if we look here at 2011, no, the previous one, please. At 2011, we see that 2011 was really a turning point in the Lebanese economy, as economic growth plummeted from over 8.25% to below 1%, and the balance of payments shifted from a surplus of $7 billion to a deficit. And this was accompanied by the influx of Syrian refugees to Lebanon. This is when the Syrian crisis started, and we had the high influx. And around the same time, we see that the public debt also began a sharp rise, and it has reached approximately 180% of the GDP, as by the latest data by the World Bank. And this report also tells us that poverty has more than tripled over the last decades, reaching around 44% in some areas. And from the latest fact sheet from Mercy Corps, October 2024, it's estimated that the GDP will contract by 12.8% for this quarter if the war goes on until January 2025, with a monthly loss of $3 billion. This is the cost of war, and these are the latest from Mercy Corps for USAID and the EU. Here in this slide, we can see how this crisis has impacted the main labor force indicators, and I'm showing you the variation so you can forecast for the future and predict what we can have. So it's a worsening situation. Informal employment and the informal sector are growing. So this shows that the growing resilience on job outside formal regulations and protection, and emphasizes the precarious nature of work of many. The unemployment rate rose from 11.4 to 29.6. The labor, and this of course was reflected in the labor force participation, which has decreased by 5.4%. And the most important is the composite measure of labor force underutilization, because it not only captures unemployment rate, but also the labor force participation, the potential, and the underemployment. And this has skyrocketed from 16.2 to 50.1. And this is really very, very alarming. These shifts underscore a deteriorating labor market, and it reflects on the ongoing crisis, of course. To go more particular and with more intersectional lens, we can see that the unemployment rate of female PWD is the highest, with 95%. And although Lebanon used to be a leader in gender equalities issues, it was ranked as 133 over 146 countries as to the general index, the WEF for 2024, and 122 over 146 for the women's economic participation. Next, please. Okay, now this, of course, tell us that we need to have legislations. And if we have to look at the legal framework in Lebanon, we see that we have provisions that promote equality, promote justice, but that contradict and create a legal paradox, if we can say it. So while we have articles in the Constitution that provide for, I don't call it really equality because it doesn't provide for equality, it's more for justice. We have Article 7 and 12 and 24. 12 is about the right of everyone to have to be employed in the public sector. Article 7 provides that all citizens are equal in front of the law. We have laws like the labor law, Article 26, that prohibits discrimination based on gender. Law number 220 over 2000 with its article and provides for a progressive quota for the employment of PWD. But these really, when we go and check whether they are rightly implemented, they are not. And still women face discrimination in the place of work. While, for example, Article 26 prohibits discrimination based on your dress code, we can see that judges are prohibited from wearing a hijab, for example, a scarf. So if I am somebody who wears a scarf and I go to complain, how can they judge in such a case, for example? Other laws are potentially, but just I will sum it up. Okay, other laws like 503, 508 criminalize rape. However, they explicitly exclude marital rape, for example, from the law. Article 27 from the labor law prohibits women from working in several sectors. We have some enablers of equality, mainly related to sexual harassment, to the consent, to protecting vulnerable people, and to protecting from domestic violence. This is important, and this is an enabler of equality when we talk about protection from violence, because violence affects the GDP, and it was estimated in 1998 in the US that it costed their economy around $1 billion. So these laws are very important, but we need mechanisms to implement them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Abir, also for shedding light on really critical issues, particularly the issue of the contradictory laws, where sometimes the intention of it is to create, equality towards one group, but then discriminate against the other. I'll move to Libya now. We already got to the time of our event, so we really have very little time. I please encourage everyone who, if there's anything that you can shorten, that would be greatly appreciated, because we have an event following that one as well. Mariam is a research associate at SAWI, and she's an assistant professor at the University of Benghazi, Libya. Mariam, over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for everyone for such beautiful insights from our sister countries. Regarding Libya, I'll start with the socioeconomic context, and I'll try to be as fast as possible considering the time. So for Libya, it's an upper middle income country with a population of 7 million. It has the largest gas reserve in Africa, oil reserve in Africa. The economy is heavily reliant on gas, contributing to over 95% of exported revenue. The Libyan economy is dominated by the state-owned enterprises, with the public sector being the main labor force. Libya, unfortunately, has been facing significant challenges over the last decade, with political instability and ongoing conflict since 2011. This has led to economic fluctuations, fragmented government and infrastructure, which further impacted socioeconomic development. And to that point, the female employment rate has jumped to 26% as compared to their male counterpart, which is 15%. The other problem in Libya is the real severity of lack of reliable data on socioeconomic indicators, which poses a significant challenge when we need to identify a specific area needing intervention. Next slide, please. Thank you. So with regard to the legislation, I'll start with the EO legislation or legislation that are related to equal opportunities. The first one is the Constitution, which measures or ensures equality before the law and prohibits discrimination, promotes equal pay. Also, we have the labor law. And if we look closely, unfortunately, even though we do have laws that enable equality in general, they specifically lack or specifically have equality gaps. So while the labor law for specific and penal code generally considered enablers of equality, the labor law in specific have a provision against discrimination in employment. But unfortunately, this law specifically mentioned or restricts women from being employed in jobs and quoting the law unsuitable for women. And the penal code, even though this law addresses sexual harassment and violence, it offered general protection for women in public and private spheres. However, this law highlights the systematic inequality and also fails to provide adequate support to violence and sexual harassment victims. Next slide, please. And so what are the challenges of EO implementation in Libya? And it's very similar to the other countries that we previously mentioned, so I'm not going to go in details, but they do fall into main two categories. The first one is the ongoing conflict and instability. It weakened the government structures, disruption of essential services, led also to shifts of priority in terms of intervention. There's also, on the other hand, traditional norms. These traditional societal roles often prioritize family responsibility for women and also are hindering any effectiveness of equality law that enable women participation in the labor force. So to summarize, as you can see, Libya's path to achieving equal employment is compounded by social political climate and requires really tailored intervention that focuses on rebuilding institutional capacity. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mariam, and thank you for all our speakers, and apologies again for having to push you to cut things short, especially when you're giving us such extremely important and insightful information. Massive, heartfelt, apology from me. Now we move to Morocco. Manal Al-Aboubi, professor at Mohammed V University in Rabat and the HEM Research Center. Manal, over to you. I can't see the participants, but
yeah. Thank you very much.
I can hear you now.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Daouk, for having me with you today. It's my pleasure to present Morocco on behalf of the Moroccan Sawi team, who is based in HEM Research Center, and talk about equal opportunities in Morocco. I can't begin without expressing my deep thoughts for Lebanese and Palestinian people, with hopes that peace will soon return to the region. In order to have a quick overview of the Moroccan socio-economic context, as you may know, Morocco socio-economic context is shaped by its geographical position, which is actually between Europe, Africa, Arab world, and America. So the country has experienced actually steady economic growth driven by sectors like, as you can see here, agriculture, tourism, mining, and renewable energy. So Morocco has implemented also social programs to combat poverty and improve education and healthcare access. And the government prioritizes actually some structural reform to enhance competitiveness, address inequalities, and attract foreign investment, aiming to transition toward a more inclusive and sustainable development model. So regarding some socioeconomic indicators, as you can see here, we have Morocco that ranks 136th out of 146 countries on the World Economic Forum's Gender Gap Index. And it is also ranked 139th for women economic participation. So this ranking actually reflects a significant gap in opportunities for women in the workforce. That explains also our investment through the SAWI program project to work on this gender gap. And currently, the general unemployment rate is 13.5%, and the female unemployment is even higher, standing at 21.6% according to the ILO on 2022. So for people with disabilities, the unemployment rate is even higher at 47%. In terms of legislation, Morocco has made notable legal reforms to promote unemployment and to promote employment equality, such as implementing quotas for various institutions and disability quotas in the public sector. Also, Morocco's 2018 law on violence against women is in the first of its kind in the region, making a significant step forward in addressing violence against women and setting a precedent for other countries in the region. However, challenges remain. Articles like 179 and 181 on the labor law still restrict the employment of women and people with disabilities in some sectors with a very high risk, so that we call the risky jobs. We have also one main thing that I would like really to shed light on it, which is the family code in Morocco that we call Mudawanat al-Usra. It's undergoing significant review and potential reform in 2024. So the legal framework, which governs family matters like marriage, divorce, childcare, was last updated in 2004 to enhance women's rights. And this reform was considered as progressive in the world Arab, granting women greater autonomy, such as the family, the ability to file for divorce and equal parental rights. So the ongoing revision of this family code aimed to address critical issues such as child marriage, inheritance rights, male guardianship, and women rights activists have been pivotal in advocating for these changes, pushing for a fairer legal framework. And those women's rights activists are mainly feminism movement, government gate speaker, academics, and many others. Regarding the challenges to EEO implementation, I would raise here mainly two big trends. The first one is that Morocco is actually experiencing an economic openness to the world through Europe, Africa, America, and world Arab. And this opening, mainly at the diplomatic and political level, is actually expected to elevate principle of equality and social responsibility between the countries, the partners, and also encouraging all the governments involved and organizations to accelerate inclusion programs for women and other marginalized groups. And this, the challenge on organization is to go beyond, I would say, a box-ticking exercise and go through deep inclusiveness in the workplace. And the second trend in terms of challenges, it can be said that these norms are evolving thanks to various initiatives from governments, nonprofits, and organizational sector that address stereotypes and the distribution of roles between men and women in Morocco. There are a lot of initiatives that we can say, we can show here, but I would mainly talk about one notable example, which is the Tilila Trophy, which promotes women equality and inclusion in commercial advertising. But this is one initiative among many others that addresses the traditional female role between men and women and can really work on it. Well, I
Thank you so much, Dr. El Aboubi, for, again, extremely insightful information about Morocco and equal employment opportunity prospects over there. Last but not least, we have our country partner from Tunisia, Amira Marzouk, founder and CEO of Act Change Consulting Company and Deputy National Constituent Assembly, Pan-African Parliament, so she's a member of the parliament in Tunisia as well. I will hand over to you, Amira. I cannot see you yet.
شكرا دكتور لينا على التقديم. مرحبا جميعا، يسعدني الانضمام إليكم. الذي يهدف إلى تسليط الوضع حول التكافؤ العمل. سنستعرض من خلال هذا العرض بعلاقة بالسياق الاجتماعي والاقتصادي. تشير البيانات أن الاقتصاد يعتمد بشكل رئيسي على قطاع الخدمات، ما يساهم بنسبة 42.7% في الناتج المحلي، ثم يحتل قطاع الصناعات التحويلية، ثم الصناعات الاستخراجية، ثم ونجد في آخر الترتيب القطاع الفلاحة والصيد البحري. هذا يعكس تركيبة الاقتصاد التونسي التي تركز بشكل أكبر على الخدمات والصناعات مع دور متواضع للفلاحة والصيد البحري. أما في علاقة بالشركات، فإن الشركات الخاصة تساهم بشكل أكبر في الناتج المحلي مقارنة بالشركات القطاع العام، مما يعكس دورها الحيوي في العام. وبالرجوع إلى مؤشرات الاجتماعية والاقتصادية، تحتل تونس المرتبة 115 من 146 دولة حسب مؤشر الفجوة بين الجنسين، وتحتل المرتبة عدد 131 في علاقة بالمشاركة الاقتصادية للمرأة. يعود هذا التصنيف في مجمله إلى مؤشرات، جملة من المؤشرات، من ذلك التفاوت في معدل البطالة بين الإناث والذكور، حيث يقدم معدل البطالة لدى الذكور في 16.12 ثم بالنسبة للإناث 23.7%، وهذا يبرز الفجوة الكبيرة في فرص العمل بين الجنسين.
أميرة عم يقطع الصوت شوي.
للفوارق الجغرافية في معدلات الأمية والمشاركة النسائية في العمل، حيث يبلغ معدل الأمية في المناطق الريفية 26.5 مقارنة بالمناطق الحضرية 7.3%. فرغم مجانية التعليم فإن هناك صعوبة في الحصول على التعلم نظرا لصعوبة التنقل والنمو الثقافي للمحافظة يكون دون محافظتها التعليم. بالإضافة إلى المشاركة النسائية في العمل في المناطق الريفية تبلغ ب 14% مقابل 35%. هذه الأرقام في مجملها هي تكرس أو تسلط الضوء على الفجوة الحضارية بين الريف والمدينة والتحديات الكبرى التي تواجهها المرأة الريفية في المناطق الريفية. علاوة على هذه التحديات هناك العقبات الثقافية والاجتماعية، فرغم أن المرأة تتفوق في التعليم العالي إلا أن نسبة تمثيليتها على مستوى المجالس المنتخبة 20% وفي الحكومة بنسبة 38%. ومجمل هذه الأرقام تعكس تدرج المعايير الثقافية والاجتماعية التي تحد من الفرص للمرأة في التعامل في العمل وفي الوصول إلى مراكز القرار. ورغم أن هذه التحديات فإن المشرع التونسي سعى إلى إعلاء مبدأ المساواة بين الجنسين في الدستور، وذلك من خلال نص الدستور الذي ينص على استعمال لفظ والمواطنين كامل الدستور، إضافة إلى من الناحية المضمونية، حيث نجد تنصيص واضح على مبدأ المساواة، ثم تنصيص على الحق في العمل، وتنصيص على تكافؤ الفرص بين الجنسين، وفي الفصل 54 ضمان حق ذوي مما منح الدستور هذه المبادئ، وقد منح الدستور هذه المبادئ علوية تستلزم من إطار القوانين الوطنية في علاقة بهذه المبادئ، ومن ذلك اعتماد المديرية العمومية، صياغة خطة وطنية لإدماج النوع الاجتماعي، وفقا إلى إقرار اعتماد الميزانية المراعية للنوع الاجتماعي والتي تضمن تكافؤ الفرص بين الجنسين. ويعد هذا الإطار الدستوري هو خطوة إيجابية. على ذلك أننا نلاحظ مظاهر التمييز في قانون الشغل بتلقيح قانون خاص بعضو الحكومة، إلا أنه وقع إقرار ورغم الترفيع في عطلة الأمومة من 4 إلى 4 من القطاع العام أو القطاع الخاص، المحافظة على نفس التقسيم التقليدي للأدوار حيث تنص على حقوق النساء ولم تتطرق إلى حقوق الرجال في المشاركة والمساهمة في تعزيز التصورات التقليدية حول دور المرأة في مسؤوليات هذه العملية.
أميرة،
كمان نلاحظ تمييز بين المرأة العاملة في القطاع الخاص والمرأة العاملة في القطاع العام من خلال مدة العطلة، وكذلك من خلال احتساب صرف الأجور. هذا بالإضافة إلى مواصلة جلسة الأبوة، فلا قانون الشغل أو لا التنقيح 2024 ينص على دعم الرجال في مشاركتهم في الرعاية المبكرة للأطفال. ويؤكد هذا الغياب على الإصرار على تعزيز الدور التقليدي ويقلل من فرص تعزيز المساواة الفعلية بين العمل والأسرة. وختاما يمكن القول أن تونس حققت تقدما في مجال المساواة بين الجنسين على المستوى التشريعي، ولكن هناك فجوات كبيرة في الجامعات وخصوصا فيما يتعلق بالسياسات العملية، وكذلك على تغيير جذري في المواقف الثقافية تجاه النساء ودورهن خاصة في تحقيق المستدامة.
شكرا جزيلا أميرة. نعتذر الصوت ما كان كتير واضح، فكان في تقطيش بالصوت. بنقدر نبعث لكم نوتس بعدين عن النقاط الأساسية يلي شاركتهم معنا أميرة. بس شكرا كتير لكل يلي موجودين معنا اليوم. Thank you everyone for sharing all the information and apologies for the sound problems that we faced at the end. We will send you some notes about Amira's slides so that you could read them out as well. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you so much for our speakers for the time you gave to prepare and to come and present and be with us. But most importantly, thank you for continued commitment to the issue of equal employment and pushing the agenda, particularly for women and other minority groups and people with disabilities, forward. Everyone who is attending the workshop afterwards, please, you need to click on another link. It's in your calendars. Thank you again and see you all very soon.